Ultimize. I'm going to make a prediction today that's going to sound outrageous to a lot of people. And then I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes making it sound completely obvious. Here it is. Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to retain control of the House and the Senate in November 2026, even if they lose the national popular vote for House seats by 10 percentage points. Even if 10 million more Americans vote Democrat than Republican across the country, 10 million more votes. Republicans still keep the House. I'm not talking about fraud in the traditional sense, although I'm not ruling that out. I'm not talking about altered ballots or hacked machines. I'm talking about a three-part system that's being assembled in broad daylight right now, and most Americans don't see it clearly because they're looking at each piece separately instead of the whole machine. Think of it as a three-legged stool. Each leg sounds alarming on its own. All three legs together, that is a structure designed to hold power permanently. Let's go through each one. Let's start with the math, the boring procedural, completely legal math that should make your blood pressure spike. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, gerrymandering for the 2020 redistricting cycle alone gave Republicans approximately 16 extra House seats compared to what they'd win under fair maps. 16 seats, that's baked in before a single vote is cast. Then Trump went further. He personally pressured Republican states to redraw their maps again in the middle of the decade, specifically to protect the House majority in 2026. Texas alone redesigned its map to potentially deliver 5 additional GOP seats. The Supreme Court let those maps stand. Florida signed new maps worth 4 more seats. Tennessee carved up the only majority Black congressional district in Memphis, the state's sole Democratic seat, to give Republicans a shot at a 9-0 sweep. According to PBS News, Republicans now believe they could net up to 14 additional seats just from this round of mid-decade gerrymandering. So Republicans start the 2026 election with a structural advantage of somewhere between 16 and 30 House seats before anyone shows up to vote. They need 218 for a majority. You do the math. It's like spotting the other team 20 points and then telling the press it was a fair game. That's leg one, and honestly, as shocking as it is, it's actually the most boring leg because most people have at least heard of gerrymandering. What they haven't thought carefully about are the next 2 legs. Here's where it gets subtle, and subtlety in this context is a lot scarier than bluntness. Even with a massive gerrymandering advantage, there are still 30 to 70 genuinely competitive House districts across the country, seats that could go either way. You don't need to flip all of them to flip the House. Democrats need to flip roughly 7 to take the majority. So the question becomes, in those specific swing districts, how do you suppress turnout in exactly the right communities? Latino families in Phoenix suburbs, immigrant neighborhoods outside Atlanta, Vietnamese American precincts in Houston, without doing something so obviously illegal that it gets litigated in time to matter. The answer is you don't need to actually do anything. You just need people to wonder if you might. You need uncertainty. You need that possibility. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia said it openly in his podcast earlier this year. He expressed serious fear that the administration could use what he called roving ICE vans to intimidate voters at polling stations, particularly in minority and immigrant communities. He said the idea would have sounded way out of draconian a short time ago, but he said they're at our front door right now. Advocacy groups, lawyers, and election organizers have been preparing for this scenario all year. According to reporting from the Bulwark, groups like Mi Familia Vota are running voter education efforts specifically to tell prospective Latino voters what to do if ICE shows up near a polling place, because the question is no longer hypothetical. Now, Homeland Security said they have no plans to target polling places, wink, wink, but they added this small, carefully chosen asterisk. They could still arrest individuals if there was an active public safety threat near a polling location. So the official position is probably not, which is very different than absolutely not. And that gap, that space between probably not showing up and absolutely not, is where voter suppression lives. Think about what actually has to happen for this to work. You don't deploy federal agents everywhere. You don't need ICE in every Latino neighborhood in America. You cherry pick a dozen precincts, the ones inside the specific swing districts where Democrats need high turnout from immigrant communities to win. One ICE van, one federal vehicle parked 3 blocks from a polling place in a district that gets decided by 2,500 votes. Abuela has a cousin whose immigration paperwork has a complication. Nobody knows exactly what active public safety threat means. The family decides it's not worth the risk. Turnout in the precinct drops 6%. The Democrat who was going to win by 1,800 votes loses by 700 votes. And by the time a federal court rules that this was illegal voter intimidation, the election's already over. The vote is certified. The seat's taken. The damage is done and it stays done. This is not hypothetical fear-mongering. American Oversight, a nonpartisan watchdog, filed FOIA requests with ICE, Customs and Border Protection, and the National Guard Bureau in October 2025, trying to find out if deployments near polling places were being planned. The organization said the presence of law enforcement or military at polling places risk chilling voter participation and suggested the Trump administration might be counting on exactly that. The terrifying efficiency of this strategy is its plausible deniability. Nobody gave an order to suppress votes. They just parked a van. Okay, now we get to the third leg, and this is the one most people don't want to believe. Not because it's implausible, but because the implications are so severe that our brains keep looking for a reason it couldn't happen. Well, stop looking. There's no reason it couldn't happen. Here's what we know as documented fact. On April 28, 2026, 2 weeks ago, the United States Department of Justice indicted former FBI Director James Comey for the second time. This administration previously indicted him for allegedly lying to Congress. The case was dismissed. So now they came back. What did Comey do this time? He posted a photo on Instagram of seashells on a beach. The shells happened to be arranged in the shape of the numbers 8647. Comey said he didn't know some people associated those numbers with violence. He deleted the post immediately. It didn't matter. The Trump Justice Department said a reasonable person would interpret beach seashells as, quote, a serious expression of intent to do harm to the President of the United States. Now, multiple legal scholars said the case has almost no chance of surviving in court. A Stanford professor at the Hoover Institute told CNN, and I quote, this is not going anywhere. This is clearly not a punishable threat. But here's the thing. The point was never to win in court. The point was to establish what's possible. Now, here's where Stephen Miller enters the story, because Miller has been very helpful in telling us exactly where this is heading. On August 25th, 2025, on Fox News, Miller said this, and Snopes confirmed every word of it, so nobody can claim it was taken out of context. He said, quote, the Democrat Party does not fight for, care about, or represent American citizens. It is an entity devoted exclusively to the defense of hardened criminals, gangbangers, and illegal alien killers and terrorists. The Democrat Party is not a political party. It is a domestic extremist organization. Full stop. The president's deputy chief of staff on national television declared the Democratic Party not a legitimate political party, but a domestic extremist organization. Then, and this is the part that the New York Times reporter Peter Baker flagged publicly, exactly 1 month later on September 25th, Miller was put in charge of coordinating a federal campaign to prosecute what the administration called domestic terrorist organizations. The very man who labeled Democrats an extremist organization was handed the machinery to prosecute extremist organizations. Trump himself signed an executive order designated Antifa a domestic terrorist organization, an organization that legal experts point out doesn't actually exist as an organization. It's a decentralized ideology, kind of like an idea. There's no membership card, no headquarters, no treasurer. As the former counsel for domestic terrorism at the Justice Department told NPR, if that designation were expanded, it would, quote, effectively criminalize activity that is associated with a diffuse, shared, collective dissent. Dissent. That's the word, not violence, dissent. And then consider this. According to Democracy Docket's reporting, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk in September 2025, Miller went on Fox and said about the left, I don't care how. It could be a RICO charge, a conspiracy charge, conspiracy against the United States insurrection. But we're going to do whatever it takes to dismantle the organizations. He literally listed the legal theories he intends to use. That's not a threat. That's a roadmap. Now, here's the scenario I want you to sit with. It's late October 2026, 3 weeks before the midterms. There are 25 Democratic candidates who are leading in polls in competitive districts. Their campaigns are raising money on Act Blue, which Trump has already ordered investigated. Their major donors include progressive foundations, which Trump has already directed prosecutors to examine under RICO. Their party has already been publicly labeled a domestic extremist organization by the man now running the government's terrorist prosecutions. What's the legal barrier specifically? What is it that prevents Trump from calling Kash Patel and saying, I have a list of names? I'm asking seriously, not rhetorically, what is it? Because the precedent is now set that the former director of the FBI can be indicted for a beach photograph. Because the machinery to label organizations as terrorist groups has already been built and deployed. Because the lead driver of domestic policy has already stated on record in the clearest possible language that the Democratic Party is not a legitimate political party. And here's the ballot question that nobody's quite asking out loud. In most states, if a candidate is a member of a federally designated terrorist organization, they can be kept off the ballot entirely. You don't have to arrest anyone. You just have to formally designate the party, and the election machinery does the rest. No candidate, no campaign, no loss to worry about. Miles Taylor, the former senior Department of Homeland Security official, put it starkly on PBS's NewsHour. He said Miller's language, calling Democrats a domestic extremist organization, is, quote, the language that we used in the counterterrorism community to describe terrorist groups that we were going after. That's how we describe groups as extremist organizations in Iraq when we mounted a counterinsurgency campaign. This is not a liberal talking. That's a former senior official of a Republican administration telling you what the words actually mean to people who've used them professionally. So let's bring this all together. Leg one, you've got the maps. Republicans have engineered a structural head start of 16 to 30 House seats through gerrymandering. Democrats begin every election at a severe mathematical deficit. Leg two, targeted chilling. You don't suppress votes everywhere. You suppress them in a dozen carefully chosen precincts in a dozen swing districts in a way that's nearly impossible to litigate in real time. An ICE van doesn't have to arrest anyone to make the neighborhood stay home. Leg three, the legal arsenal, the precedent. Comey indicted over seashells. The label Miller calling Democrats a domestic extremist organization. Then handed the machinery to prosecute domestic extremist organizations. The tools, RICO, conspiracy charges, terrorism designations, and potential ballot removal. And a Justice Department that has demonstrated twice that it will indict the same person over and over again until anything sticks. simply because the president wants it done. Here's the broader philosophical truth I keep coming back to. Democracies don't necessarily die in dramatic coups. There are no tanks in the streets sometimes, no generals seizing a palace. They die through incremental normalization. Each step goes 1 inch further than the last. And at no point does anyone hit a wall. At no point does anyone say, this is the line and we will not cross it. James Comey was indicted over seashells. The stock market went up. The news cycle moved on. That normalization, that shrug, should frighten you more than the indictment itself. Now, I want to end honestly. I could be wrong about parts of this. Courts could strike down the worst gerrymanders, though it doesn't look like it. DHS could keep federal agents genuinely away from polling places. Trump might decide that formally designating the Democratic Party a terrorist organization 3 weeks before an election is a step too far, even for him. But here's what I'm not wrong about. All 3 legs of this stool are already built. The maps are already drawn. The fear is already in immigration communities' heads. The Comey precedent is already established practice. The Miller Declaration, it's already on tape. The machinery is already running. The only force that has ever reliably stopped a party from using every tool available to stay in power is a wave so large, so undeniable, so massive that no map, no ice van, no indictment can hold it back. Public fury turned into votes, overwhelming, documented, irrefutable Democratic participation. That's the only play left, which means the only real question is, do enough Americans understand what's being built before November? Because I promise you, they're counting on most of you not seeing the stool until all 3 legs are holding the weight. Ultimize.